was exciting to have it in front of an audience. You're watching yourself on screen. Oh, we were leaving each other these 20-minute voice messages as we're creating who Pam was and who Pam is and how Pam got to where they are now.
So far, the reception of the film is really great. We're really grateful for it.
I guess I was worried how people would perceive me playing someone who is of that character and does and says the things that he does.
Now more than ever, we need to champion independent film and independent filmmakers. So, I mean, if you like independent films and you miss the edgy movies of the 90s and the 2000s, I think you might like Beautiful Pam.
And welcome to this special edition of The Movie Wire. I am joined by the director, writer, and much, much more, J.R. Stokes, of the new emotionally mesmerizing film, Beautiful Pam. J.R., welcome to the show.
Hey, Justin, thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you, and I know things are picking up with the film release. I know between film festivals, promotions, I absolutely appreciate the time that you're taking. But speaking of, on top of the film Beautiful Pam, and I see you've brought with you some beautiful talent of the movie. You cannot miss these two faces. So I'll give you the honor of introducing your incredibly talented cast here.
Well, we have with us Tom Ciorciari, who's our wonderful lead in the film. Just such an actor and really brings Pam to life. And aside next to Tom, we have Peter Konsevitch, who plays Beetle in the film. It's just this amazing performance. These are my two friends that are here with me today.
I can't tell you how excited I am for Peter and Tom to join us today because they are the faces among an incredible cast. But these two, I was giddy today because they are the ones that I have probably the most questions. No disrespect to you, JR. I know you made an incredible movie, but these two speak wonders of how you character direct and the outcome of the movie. So we're going to get into it, but I want to start with a quote from Action Magazine that said it better than I ever could on my feelings with this movie. And that is, in the landscape of independent cinema, some films arrive quietly yet leave a lasting emotional echo. Beautiful Pam, written and directed by J.R. Stokes, is one of those films. Now, I'm not the most articulate guy, but this is one that I couldn't say it better. And I remember when I watched the screener, I sat in silence and just took it in. Why don't you just tell us the origin of Beautiful Pam? Tell us about the film. Tell us why people should see this movie, and they absolutely should.
Well, thank you for saying that, Justin. I appreciate that. A very sweet introduction. I think as far as getting people to see the film, I think now more than ever, we need to champion independent film and independent filmmakers and independent stories, right? And especially DIY films, right? I mean, we're seeing less and less of that. We're seeing less of a risk taken in the film industry. So, I mean, if you like independent films and you miss the edgy movies of the 90s and the 2000s and you miss stories that resonate with everyday people, then I think you might like Beautiful Pam, As far as where Beautiful Pam came from, I think came from a few different places, right? Including bringing Pete and Tom into the conversation as well. I think we all pulled a bit from our own personal lives into the film. But as far as coming up with the story of Beautiful Pam, I mean, I wanted to tell a story about isolation and loneliness and empathy. And these are all qualities about the characters and the story that I'm pulling from myself and injecting that into the film, and I think that's where the story came from at its core, I mean, I think Pam is ultimately a story about learning how to become a person. And that's not always the easiest thing. And that's something that a lot of us are still figuring out, no matter our age.
One thing I absolutely respect about this movie is you zeroed in on the character itself. You do have overhanging themes of addiction, empathy, and even redemption at times, or the attempt at redemption. But we never lose focus on the characters. And that's where I want to kind of pivot over to Tom is tell me about it. Tell me about Pam. Tell me when you first read the script, what was your first reaction and how were you going to attack this character? Because this is a deep character. And when it comes to identifying with Pam, there's not a lot of information that is given when it comes to a full background. We get hints throughout the movie, but this is a full-blown character that you have to almost identify with on how you're going to execute it. Tell me about your strategy to this.
Well, when I first read it, it was um, it was the character's loneliness, their character's otherness that I found really appealing. You know, and then Jr. and I, in the months before we even started rehearsing, we were leaving each other these 20-minute voice messages throughout the day as we were creating who Pam was and who Pam is and how Pam got to where they are now. Um, and ultimately it's just a human story, and that's what I was able to tap into. That no matter how a person looks or what they're 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 drawn to in their lives, they still are underneath it. We're all just people. You peel off the skin and we all look exactly the same. And that's what Pam is, just this person who is lost and trying to find their way. And that's what I was able to kind of tap into and really use and play.
It's amazing. And I know Peter with Beetle, towards the end of the movie, we get a moment of silence where you're really identifying and reflecting on where the addiction started with a speech on video games that I absolutely loved. And between Tom and Peter, it's almost a moment of silence between the two characters where you have Tom that is just mentally reflecting, and then it goes to Beetle, who throughout the movie, we don't see much reflection, but more almost excuses of how his addiction kind of grew. And it's the first moment we see a little bit of an arc with you. Like, tell me where you went to. Same with question as I had for Tom is how'd you attack this character? We see you in a lot of uncomfortable scenes in this movie, and then we get to this moment in the laundromat. Tell me how you led up to that, how you crescendoed to that, and how you attacked more particularly that scene going forward.
So I'll start with this and then I'll get to the point. So originally I remember when we had our first read through and I was reading the lines, I was very entertained. I think Beetle, as despicable, as he may be, some of his actions may be rather. He came across very comedic at first, and I think that's what was just registering because that was like first read, cold read. And then the further I got into it, it's like, no, he's a bad person, but there's a certain charm to it, and that's really what I wanted to like play to. Is I'm not trying to get you to like sympathize or empathize with Beetle, although arguably there are factors of Beetle's life that really you very well could. I think it's just I don't know. I just kind of placed myself in it. I'm not someone that's really I don't have a lot of like much to say in the way of like technique and stuff. I took there's people in real life for Beetle. So one of them is a family member of mine that I won't name in case they watch this. But Beetle was definitely taking a portion from them and a portion from someone Sid knows as well, and just like paying attention and studying these people and like what makes them tick, what makes them, Beetle has his funny moments, but then he becomes darker and darker and darker. And the thing is, I think Beetle, that was always present with Beetle, but something I did with it was, put on that facade. He's like, nothing matters, I'm clowning around. But at the end you really see that like Beetle actually like he's serious, he just likes attention and he likes people around him and stuff. So I don't know if that was a long-winded way of answering the question, but yeah.
Not at all, because my first reaction to watching Beetle, I was like, this guy's going full dazed and confused, and I absolutely loved it. But then it really arches into kind of where we see a progression of addiction is it's not to be so simplistic, but it's all fun and games until you realize where you are on your journey.
Oh
And
yeah.
I thought it was a brilliant crescendo of self-realization.
A lot of that like I appreciate you recognizing that because a lot of that comes from there's a true story in my life when I was much younger. I got myself into a really difficult situation related to drugs, and I it was like this moment of like life changing. Like I'm a big believer, in like guardian angels and stuff like that, and I really believe that like my grandma, who I believe is my guardian angel, was watching over me that day, and it changed my life forever. And I like hit rock bottom that day, and I spit right back up and like just came out of it. It took a while, of course, but that's something I really wanted to like play with, especially in the end with Beetle, just taken from real life.
I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that. That is
Yeah, of
an
course.
absolutely incredible story. And, you know, part of acting, and I'm sure Tom, you can bring this to the table, is bringing that self past into kind of the role, whether it's not personal, but at the same time, we all know somebody that has suffered from addiction who have had problem with even identifying who we really are that can lead to
Yeah.
addiction to filling that void. Tom, when we're portraying Pam, where did you tap into? Was it a movie character? Was it somebody you knew without getting too personal? Where did you really have that seedling of Pam?
Um, I think ultimately, I wasn't trying to look at any characters in movies. You know, I mean, I often talk about my respect for early Al Pacino performances because what I loved about his early performances, the performances in the '70s, is there was this incredible vulnerability in his characters, all of them. Even Michael Corleone. There's a vulnerability underneath it all, and that's a trait I like to try to tap into. Um, but a lot of Pam was just myself. Looking at your insecurities. Um, you're not sure what direction you're going in at points in your life. You get when you've been around a while. Life experience. You can tap into a lot of your own life experience, and I've never had that type of addiction issue that Pam has, but I've certainly had moments of being a little lost and not sure what what where to go. And I think that's something that's a universal thing. We all have those moments, and for some people they're longer than others. Sometimes they're long periods of time, but you just feel this you're not sure where you're going. You don't want to be where you are, but you don't even know how you got there. So it's like, what do I do now? How do I get out of this? What needs to change? And that was kind of where I came, with Pam. A lot of that.
I absolutely love that because what I appreciate about your performance is the proper balance where addiction is always prominent, but you have a subtle way of portraying Pam where you can see the vulnerability where as a viewer,
Right.
we're empathetic towards. We want to go on this journey with Pam and we can see the struggle that she's having on what she's going to do with her family, how she's going to connect, or where she is in life at that exact moment. So it's a very
Thank
subtle performance, but it goes to the theme of the movie. Of by the end of it, it's absolutely powerful because when this movie is the quietest loud movie I have seen in a while, where you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room. You don't have to be the one shouting the emotional lines. You can just sit there, watch Pam, listen to the dialogue coming out of your mouth, and by the end of it, say,
no, thank
absolutely perfect because it's going to rely on the viewer to really identify with Pam. And you said it brilliantly that everybody might not struggle with addiction, but the vulnerability piece to it, the emptiness, the loneliness, all of it is really well balanced when it comes to not only storytelling, but I mean, Pam, this one is the driver of having that question mark of saying, how is the viewer going to identify if you can't identify with addiction? Is this is something, a character that anybody can
Mhm.
identify with because we've all been there when it comes to how we feel that void or how we're going to feel that emotional void. And it's not always with addiction, but it's with something. And I think it's an important message this movie tells when it comes to
Right.
finding and partnering with ourselves. Even from the opening scene, I chuckled a little bit where the therapist says, have you tried going to a support group? And you just said, "Give me the fucking prescription." And it is one of those you don't know where this character is going to go,
Yeah.
and it's really a brilliant piece of filmmaking and performance to really take us on this journey that we never really know where Pam's going to go, but we want to follow and we want to identify with. Which is going to go into my next question of it. The movie's been in numerous film festivals so far. Now, what was that experience like, and what was your gut reaction walking in to a film festival and your curiosity of what the reaction is going to be and how you felt afterwards.
Pete, why don't you go first on this?
Yeah, I had a big old smirk on my face. You could ask these guys. Leading up to it, I definitely, because Beetle is a character. He's a guy, and I was sort of, I guess, even though I felt I did a very respectful job of giving the performance, and I believe I do. I was just, I guess, I was worried how people would perceive me playing someone who is of that character and does and says the things that he does. So I'll never forget sitting at the first festival we were at, Be Frank, and I'm sitting in the back of the theater, and we have like 100 people in front of us. And I'm sitting in the back, and I'm giving my Pledge of Allegiance, why I don't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance anymore monologue, and I was like, oh god, and then everybody started laughing. I was like, ah. And then I never worried about it again. And I should have thought I'm in a room full of like thoughtful artists, but overall, like the experience, everybody has been great, and we saw great films. We supported other artists that we met at like mixers and stuff. They came to support us. Everybody was really cool. A lot of cool connections, a lot of great people to talk to, and just a lot of things we didn't know about like the filmmaking process, that things we didn't know now that we will know in the future and will carry with us, and like just like cool interesting things. There's so much to learn always, and I think it was just a beautiful learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it was exciting to have it in front of an audience. Yeah, I'm always like watching a movie, kind of, you're watching yourself on screen, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And early on, like Pete mentioned, the Pledge of Allegiance. There's that line that Pam has early on where like I like to fuck a lot. I guess you could say I have a fucking problem. That got a laugh, and I went, oh, okay, all right. They're locked in. They're already kind of on our side. Um, yeah, it's interesting. You put it in front of an audience, and you don't know. One thing we've said, amongst ourselves is that with any, you create something, and you have intent, and you have ideas, and this is what you're going to do, and you put it out, and then it's not yours anymore. It just belongs now to the audience. However they interpret it, however they see the characters. Oh, you're a bad guy. You're a good guy. Or you're sympathetic. Oh, you're a loser. Whatever it is, we have no control over that. So that's been really interesting, is to hear the responses from people. Did they get what we were doing, or did they get something else? As long as, and everybody seems to, knock wood, thus far, very positive responses. But it's been really interesting. So it's a learning experience in that respect too. How your work is accepted and received. So that's been a very cool part of the whole process.
Now, when you go to a movie, you see yourself for the first time, usually walking out, it's usually the first bit of feedback, criticism, positive feedback, whatever it may be. Human nature is that's the thing that sticks with us because it's the first thing to validate us. So
Hmm.
Hmm.
tell me about the first piece of feedback walking out of a screening, a festival, and how it's changed your perspective on the movie, or if it did. But tell me about the first bit of feedback you've received.
Pete?
One of the first things I got was it was in a write up actually, and it was Peter Konsevitch plays a loser to perfection, and I was like, oh, that's very sweet. I thought that was a
Oh,
very
oh
funny,
no.
sweet thing. But there was a lot of people that like came up to it. Was just so, again, like a plethora of all any nicety that you can think of. I won't sit here and gas myself up. I'm just saying, like, a plethora of any nicety that you can think of, like towards me, Tom, Jr. It just very natural, very very thought provoking, and what interested me was a lot of people, like afterwards, me and Tom's final scene together. A lot of people had all these different thoughts about it. Like, for example, myself, like going into that scene, I'm just showing you that I don't care. I don't care about you, Pam. I don't care about any of this. Some people took it as I was kind of like a weeping child, and I was like, I don't care about you, but really, I wanted Pam's attention and Pam to still be in my life. And I thought that was such an interesting take. And I'm mentioning that because you had said like people will think, Tom, you had said people will think different things, and that was something that was interesting to me. Yeah.
Love that. Now, JR, I know you've been quiet so far, but Same question goes to you. This is your baby, right? This is your show when it comes to seeing your movie on the big screen. What was your first reaction? What was your feeling sitting down in a theater seat, watching your movie come up with your incredible cast? What thoughts went through your head?
Wow, this movie's really long. It's like Tom said, it's a great thing. You know, so far the reception of the film has been really, really great. We're really grateful for it. We're really thankful for it. I think ultimately, you know, akin to what Tom said earlier, when we put a film out there, right? When you put something out there, it's up for interpretation. You have to let go of it. Uh, you have to let go of your expectations on what you want people to feel. You know, when you're making something, there's an intention of how you want people to feel, but ultimately, when you put it out there, it's everyone's game. You know, it's fair for everyone to take what they feel from it. But overall, I mean, seeing it on the big screen for the first time and seeing it in a room full of people, it's a magical feeling, man. It's great. It's awesome. It's a privilege to be doing this, and it's a privilege to be doing this with people I truly admire, and to be doing this at a level where people are resonating with the work too. That's just the cherry on top.
What was the first, explain it in one sentence.
Sure.
First thought walking out of the theater after your first screening.
Um, I don't know. I mean, overall, I try and I mean, I've seen the movie 20 times. I've seen the movie hundreds of times before it came out, you know? So at that point, you kind of become a little desensitized to watching it, to having an initial reaction because I've seen it so many times. And, you know, I sent scenes individually so many times to sound people and blah, blah, blah. Like every bit, every frame, every part of this film, you know, you almost become desensitized to it from seeing it so many times. I think I was just happy. You know, it seemed to be a good reaction for all of our screenings. It seems to have gotten a really positive reception, and I'm really grateful for that. I think that's really what it is, gratitude.
Love that. And I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy. I'm going to turn the tables. Give me one sentence of what you want people to feel and think walking out of this movie.
Um, I hope that people. I've been asked that question a few times, right? And I've always kind of dodged it a little bit because I've always said it's not fair for me to try and toe the line regarding how people want the story to play out or what they want to take from it. But I'll play dice with you. I feel that ultimately people should come away from the film with something. They should resonate with what they see on screen. They should resonate with what Pam goes through. I want them to empathize with Pam. You know, I want them to see Pam not just for the character on the screen, but as a real person. Because there's a lot of people out there that are just like Pam in their own way. Whether or not you can directly relate to Pam's lifestyle, the things that Pam expresses, and the things that Pam feels about themselves and about life in general, that's a lot of stuff that a lot of people go through. And I think we need to really be more aware of that and empathize with that.
Now, obviously, a movie with heavy topics that we've discussed on the show so far. Now, shooting, there had to be some difficulties when it comes to emotions, I would imagine, of how do we stay in character versus balancing the morale, right? I mean, how do we balance the topic of addiction, of loneliness, and still keep your cast motivated? I mean, this has got, if it was me, and the reason I critique movies is because I can't do it myself. So this is more of a curiosity, is you have a lot of this heavy topic coming home at the end of the day of shooting where, Tom, you have scenes in an apartment where you're doing drugs, you're in almost a slum of an apartment. And I love the end table with the Pepto and all the frames and all this. It's really well set. How
Thank
do you come back from that, and what's going through your head leaving shooting from a day?
You know, it's. I think about Ben Kingsley asked at some whatever it was when he was House of Sand and Fog. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but there's a very very traumatic event at the end of the movie, and his character is very tightly wound and very controlled, and he just loses it for like 5 minutes, it shakes you. And he was asked, "So how did you do that? Did you imagine this?" He said, "I'm an actor. I just read what was on the page and I did it." And I don't mean to distill it to that, but that's kind of what it was. You knew what the scene was. And as an actor, you get to play something that's good, that's rich, that you get to, okay, we get to do this, and that's, Jr. said it earlier. We get to do this. It's a gift that we get to make film and be actors and be directors and filmmakers, and so it was just. It wasn't like I was in this deep dark place. And maybe I got there a little bit throughout the course of the shooting, but it wasn't like I carried this like, oh, life is so hard. No, it just was acting, and I don't mean to make that sound less than it is. But it was just, this is what's on the page. This is the scene. I can't wait to get to do this now and to bring whatever I can to this character, bring this person to life that we've discussed, JR and I and Pete and I, and these scenes that we all discussed for months. So it was exciting. It was fun, for lack of better, it was fun playing this character, because it was an opportunity. An opportunity. I think Pete has the same feeling. You get this opportunity to play this really rich character, and to do it justice, and to, do what you can as a performer.
Now, that's great. And now, Peter, you're kind of the same way, but in a different aspect, because you have a character that we discussed earlier that goes through some motions, but at the end of the day, he's a character that does
Yeah.
some horrible things, and it's a ugly topic. It's an ugly action, and even though it's a character description
hmm
of motivation, but that can't be an easy thing to take away of you portraying this character that does some disgusting acts. So,
Yeah.
same question to you. Was it any different, or
So
yes? Go ahead.
I'm gonna say something similar to Tom and then go off on my own tangent. There's a great, and I believe it was said on the Howard Stern show, but there's a great quote from the late Robert Duvall, rest in peace, where he says, when I approach something, I just get pissed. I just get myself hyped up. I get angry, and I have such a, like and I guess you would say an affection for playing like dregs of society, and I think something Jr. really does well is he not only wants to understand the best of us, but also understand the worst of us. And Beetle was so enticing that I couldn't resist coming to work like every day and being a despicable human. I mean, as difficult as those topics are sometimes, and especially like the final day of shooting, there was definitely a moment after shooting where I sat there for about 20 minutes and just kind of like worked it out of my body. But I think, and this is something you learn in theater, is Tom and I both have a very rich and long tenured theater background. You learn to leave things at the door as soon as you walk into the rehearsal room, and I think that kind of also just goes into effect when you work on a set as well. Is when I'm on set, I just kind of have this like sort of ego death. I forget about Pete Konsevitch, and I just worry about Jamie, aka Beetle, and I just go from there. But I wouldn't say anything was difficult to play. I would just say it was entertaining to work with that stuff, and I'm glad that people, will have got something out of it.
I think that translates to what both of you are saying, or all of you are saying, is this is a big highlight of empathy going through. And the fact that the entire cast treats it this way says a lot about your character direction, JR,
hmm
really attacking this movie, not focused on just mere addiction, but something bigger. And I think that is something I'm going to speak on your behalf, saying if somebody were to walk out of this movie, it should be just that, of just pure empathy. There's going to be a lot in human nature that we struggle with. And it doesn't always have
Yeah.
to be addiction. We've talked about it. And I think this movie tells that bigger tale. Now, JR, am I on the right path here? Or you tell me your interpretation of what the idea was when you first attacked this script.
Definitely on the right path, Justin. I think what you just said is exactly how I felt for the past 7 months of putting this movie out there. I think that was really well said. I feel personally that in terms of attacking the script and working with these great actors, right? People are complicated, right? And I feel that in order to show that, like Tom and Pete said, we cannot judge these characters as the creators. We cannot judge them, and rather, I wouldn't even want audiences to judge them. The way I want these characters and this story to be seen by people, hopefully, is like you said, one with empathy. You know, and hopefully people empathize with that. And again, people are complicated, and sometimes the way we feel about things is complicated. And what we say complicated things. Sometimes we say things we don't mean, and that's something we see throughout this story. We see people say harmful things to each other, and they do harmful things to themselves, and that's what being a person is, right? And that's not always an easy thing, and especially with Pam, right? Pam is not complicated for who they want to be. Pam is complicated for their self-destructive behaviors that we see them progress with throughout the story. You know, and like an early point you brought up, Justin, you said there's a whole lot we don't know about what happens before the movie, right? I mean, when we watch the movie, it's about what, 1 to 2 weeks worth of story. There's an entire background that we don't know, that the audience doesn't know, and we get to see this little 2 week glimpse of Pam's life, and then we're out. You know, we get that 1 hour spent with them. Um, so yeah, as far as attacking the story, as far as attacking the script, I think it was a great collaboration between myself and this whole cast. You know, I mean, we had a lot of rehearsing that we did. We rehearsed for about 2 weeks. We shot for 23 days in September of 2024. But towards the end of August, we rehearsed for 2 weeks straight every day. You know, going in the rehearsal room in my little garage, and we had a little DIY rehearsal room in my garage, and we would just attack it together, and we would figure it out together. You know, and the great thing about working with people who are great writers, or who great actors, they're also great writers too. You know, Tom, especially Tom, had a lot of input on, well, maybe we can rearrange this, or maybe I could say this instead. Ultimately, my thing has been this, and this is something I've had to learn, right? When you're telling people that you're working with that you want them to take ownership of something, they're going to take ownership, right? They're going to give their input, and you have to be okay with that. And that's something that I learned, and that I accepted, and that I really appreciate in working with people like Tom and Peter, and Beck, and Jason, and this whole cast, this whole extraordinary cast. Um, it was a great collaboration, and I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just want to say that Jo is a really very generous collaborator with us. He really gave us a lot of room to work with the characters, with the scenes, and we would discuss it, and sometimes we wouldn't discuss it. Do this, and he'd say, "What was that? Where'd that come from?" But yeah, but again, his openness to the idea of collaboration. It wasn't like, look, here's my script, and that's it, and we're going to say every word is exactly as rewritten. You know, we were throughout the rehearsal process. We worked things. Okay, maybe that's not really working quite the way it was intended to. Let's try to, mold it. And even throughout the shooting process, we would change. You know, okay, well, let's look at this scene a little bit. Let's add this. Let's add that.
Mhm.
You know, so it was a really, in that respect, it was just such a
Mhm.
wonderful experience. It was just very rich experience of collaboration with JR, with Pete, with Beck, with Jason, Alan, Kevin, all the other people the cast was just so good and so right there. Everybody was just right on their game every day, every take. It was just wonderful.
And to add on to that, Justin, you know, you talked earlier about the natural feel of the movie, right? When you watch this film, it's like, holy shit, that felt very natural. That felt very real. A lot of that, I feel, to add on to what Tom said, that has to do with that sense of collaboration, right? I mean, I feel that if I were to lay this script down in front of people and I would just tell them, say it how it is on the page, and we're not going to change anything, you're expecting people to bring their own interpretations to something, and they can't fully do that, right? So, in telling Tom and Peter and Beck and this person, come here, give me what you got as a person, and lay it out in the scene. There were times, like Tom said, where we were saying, well, maybe this doesn't work, you know, and that's okay. And you know, I think about like the Safdie brothers, right, or John Cassavetes. You know, these are directors or Sean Baker. You know, these are directors that I truly look up to and I truly admire, and even Scorsese as well to a degree. The script is a vehicle. The script is not life or death, but it's a vehicle to get from point A to point B, right? And trying to make a good film, you got to learn how to drive that vehicle.
There's an interesting, like, there was an example I just thought of too, and this is building off of what Tom just said. When we were at our first film festival, and we did a talk back afterwards when we were at B Frank, which was a great time. Someone had said, don't you hate Beetle?" Like, he's such a bad person. Don't you hate Beetle? And I was like, no, honestly, because every time I approach a role, be it Beetle or the other roles that I've done across my lifetime, even if they're a bad person, I still go at them with empathy and love and care because I want to be authentic to like who they actually are, and I consider everything I've ever played my child, a part of me. So would someone hate their child? I would hope not. So, that I was just my response basically just was, hey, I love all my characters all the same. There's nothing to hate about it. You can hate the things he does and says, and that's fine, but like, it's a character at the end of the day, and that's my art form, and that's what I do. There's no room to hate what you do. If you love what you do, you're gonna do it, and there's no room to hate your character, because that'll just translate on screen as I don't want to be here right now, so yeah.
If I didn't love this movie so much already, I love this movie that much more after hearing all of you collaborate, talk about one another, and just the unified message speaks miles. Because I think we've all watched a lot of movies where you can tell a production nightmare when you see it on screen. And when we see your film, it validates exactly the feels we're seeing on screen by the end of the movie, because we can tell that the cast are all on the same page, from the vision of you, JR, to the character direction to just how we all interact. So thank you, because what this interview did for me was amplify how much more I love this film. So now, going forward, now let's talk about it. It's getting some awards, right? It's getting some recognition, right? Let's talk about that. What's some of the recognition? Don't be shy. Promote the hell out of this movie, because I'm going to be the cheerleader in the background, making sure this film gets seen. You can bring it to the table.
JR, go.
Oh, I don't know if you guys wanted to do the honors, talking about it. Well, so far, listen, we've had a really nice festival run so far. We've been at some really amazing festivals. We've had, uh, I got something I can show you guys too. So far, we've had a really, really nice festival run thus far. We've been with some great institutions, some great festivals. We've met some really great people. Back at the Queens World Film Festival, we took home the Best Actor Award, presented to Tom Ciorciari for Pam, with additional nominations for director and feature. Queens was such a great experience. We really, really love that, being a part of that festival. We also were at the Open Gate Film Festival, which was held in the East Village in Manhattan, out here in New York. In case you don't know where Manhattan is, we took home the Audience Choice Award along with Best Director Award, with nominations for Best Actor and Best Ensemble. So that was pretty cool. And then most recently as well, we took home Best Picture, with a nomination for Best Director at the Winter Film Fest out here in Manhattan as well, which is a really great festival. And then coming up, we are taking part in the Garden State Film Festival. For anyone that's listening out in Jersey, it's the biggest festival in Jersey. We're so honored to be a part of it. And our cast, Tom Ciorciari, nominated for Best Actor at Garden State. Peter Konsevitch, nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and Beck Fordyce, nominated for Best Supporting Actress, along with the Best Ensemble nomination as well. So it's been nice, man. It's been a great time. We're really grateful.
I feel when this movie comes out, we should do another episode where we can spend 40 minutes of you just listing the awards you win. So now, when does the movie premiere? Where can they watch it? Promote the hell out of it, and where they can follow you on some socials.
Well, we're having our big world premiere event out here in Long Island, New York, on this Saturday, March 21st. Which I don't know if this episode might be out later. So we just had our world premiere on March 21st. By the time people are listening to this episode, it'll be out on YouTube for free via March 22nd. So check it out on the Sid Cinematics YouTube channel. It'll be on there for free as of this episode releasing. And then we can go in order as far as our Instagrams. My Instagram is at Sid Cinematics and at Beautiful Pam Film.
And I'm at T Corsiari 60. You're gonna have to figure out the spelling on your own.
I am at Peter_Konsevitch. It's Russian.
So make sure you check out the movie. Make sure you follow the socials. I can't say enough about this movie. It is a game changer when it comes to independent cinema. And I cannot end this interview, because we planted seeds before we hopped on. Tom, Peter, please tell me about this opera that you two giggled about that I wasn't involved with. I need to know about it.
We. How do I come in?
We love the opera and we also love ballet.
and
Anyone, before you see this
and
film, we
jazz?
love them.
Throw that into and jazz,
And
as Conan
jazz.
pointed out.
Cool jazz.
You two are speaking my language. Love it. Different topic, different show, but absolutely love it. So, you three, I can't thank you enough for joining me. Any last thoughts before we end the show?
So thank you so much for having us, Justin. You know, I mean, this is a great
Yeah.
show, and what you're doing, right? Having us on, having independent filmmakers on, that's really important. That's what we need more of. I mean, we're only going to be able to get our film out there as independent filmmakers by getting granted the opportunity by podcasts like yourself. So thank you so much for having us, Justin. We really love the show, and we're really honored to be here. And for anyone listening, please check out our film, and thank you so much for listening.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
Last thing I'll say is, with all the movies in the last 5 years I've walked into a theater, I have been glad to walk in on movies I knew nothing about the filmmaker. Those are the ones that stay at the top of my mind versus the ones that everybody's going to go see. I challenge anybody listening to go see this movie, find a movie you've never heard of, find an independent filmmaker, and go see it, because that is going to be the restructure of cinema going forward. That is going to be how we save theaters, in my opinion, and it's going to be true. So make sure you check out Beautiful Pam and follow these amazing talents. They are going to go somewhere. You just hear me now. Again, I want to thank all of you for joining me on the show. This was an absolutely incredible time. Now, to end the show, I just want to give a brief review. And it's no shock what the end result's going to be, but let's get into it. J.R. Stokes' Beautiful Pam is a film that not just utilizes the topic of addiction, but rather uses that as a vehicle to show us a journey of discovery through empathy for our characters. Stokes creates a film that balances the uncomfortable topic of addiction and shines a new light on how to approach this in storytelling, with a cast that gets the assignment of what this movie's true intent is and delivers some memorable, fantastic performances. This is the quietest but loudest movies you will see in terms of how to tell a story through characters without force feeding us emotion. We naturally feel every performance with purpose. Now, the link to this film will be in the description of this episode. This is one not to miss. JR has created not just a film, but a reminder of struggle, but also a reminder to understand that everybody has felt the same as Pam emotionally. It is so easy to make a movie about tragedy of getting lost in addiction, but here, JR and his cast create something different by inserting the why and the human elements to a journey we go along with. I want to thank JR, Tom, and Peter for joining me, but not only that, taking me on a journey of discovery and taking the time to ensure this film gets seen. Because this is the easiest call of the year. I'm giving Beautiful Pam 4 stars.